Okay, so we're gonna work on this lab that requires Kali Linux. So we need to visit the link, download. Once we download it and it stores here, we right click, go to show more options, 7-zip, and extract files. Once you extract the files, you would have the folder like this, but don't go in there and double click. We need to change the setting for your VM. So open up your VirtualBox, click add. If you see this message, just hit cancel, go to your downloads folder, find the unzip folder, open its subfolder, load your VBox file. Don't click start yet. We need to go and change the setting because we want our system to be a little bit more powerful. So click on the settings, then go to system, and we're going to give this 8 gig. Because if you are doing 2 gig and 2 core, it's going to be crawling slow. You're going to sit here for a while waiting for your attack, right? For processor, we're going to give it 4 core, but of course, if you have more resource, you can allocate more resource for your VM. And we're going to click OK for now. We're going to change this later when we add the USB. So I'm going to go next and click start, right? So click start, it's going to load. So what I did there was part A. We've done this a few times so far for most of our labs. So I changed the RAM, I gave it more core, and then the next step is to log in. The hardest part for this lab is to get your USB wireless adapter working. If it doesn't work, then you cannot attack, right? Let's say that if you have a laptop and you want to use that laptop, I tried to read and see if there are options where you can share the built-in laptop wireless adapter with the virtual machine and the host. VirtualBox doesn't allow you to do that. So if I'm using it for my host machine, I can't really use it for my VM. So this is why we're using a USB adapter. That's the best way. Just invest the $15 and not have to deal with it, because most of your attacks should be performed in a VM. So it is better just to use a USB, even though it is a little bit slower, but it's really depending on your antenna and the chip that's inside that USB adapter, right? You can find some for cheaper than $15. It doesn't have to be that brand, but like I mentioned before, you need to make sure that there's Linux driver for that adapter, because if you buy it, there's no driver for it, then you're gonna be stuck with it and you're gonna have to get another one, unless you want to write the driver for it, which probably is a lot more complicated than just spending another $15. So here we are, right? We're going to log in. And we are going to first, very important, I tried with just update, and I ended up like going back and forth and installing many more packages. So I know that this part is really long and we do this all the time, but you need the upgrade for the build down here, the driver build. If you don't have that, you will not have the appropriate Linux header file. And if you don't have Linux header file, you cannot get this to work. So yeah, at this point, you want to take a little break after you run the update and upgrade. Okay. So after you do the update and upgrade, that will probably take, I don't know, 5-10 minutes, 10 minutes maybe. You should reboot. Okay. Once you reboot, you're going to log back in and you're going to install the DKMS. This is going to allow the system to go through the library and the Linux header to build your driver that you're going to download later on. Okay. Now, if you're missing something, and when you install these things, pay attention to the output. You can't just copy and paste the command or type it in and not pay attention to what's showing to you. If it's generating an error, likely that you will not be able to get the driver to work. So when you get to some area, if you're getting an error, like especially for step 20, when you're doing the DKMS install and it's saying that, oh, it would say error in capital letter, you need to run this, okay, in italicize to get it to remove, and then you are going to redo this command, because if you remove it and you don't remake it, it's not there and your driver will not work. And I put that here. You need to repeat the driver installation command, which is the same step. Okay. Okay, so I'm here. I'm going to click yes. Okay, so while that's working, let's talk about Wi-Fi. One of my most favorite wireless attack tool. It does use aircrack in the back. It does use tumbler in the back. It does use a lot of the other tool that you would see in the notes. It has, okay? But it is definitely user-friendly. The wizard on it is wonderful. It is great. So after you install this, you are going to do a shutdown, reconfigure your USB, and then you are going to boot it again, and you're going to check to see if your wireless adapter works. If it doesn't, let me know, okay? So I'm going to pause this because I think... Okay, so now we're going to do... I know some of you get stuck here, because if you get stuck here, you cannot attack, right? So after we do the update and upgrade, that takes a long time. I'm going to go ahead and reboot, and just type in reboot, or you can click. This is going to take a second to reboot, lock back in, and you're going to install this. The reason why we're installing DKMS is because this is needed to build the driver, because drivers they come down as raw file, their code, and in order to convert the code into something that the hardware can understand, driver is a software that's used to control your hardware, right? So in order to do that, you need to use this package. But in order to use DKMS effectively, you need Linux header, right? So this is very important. Now, in a lot of the instruction, it uses the outdated headers. So I normally would use the generic option. That's going to give you the most current file that you need for your Linux machine. So without this, if it's saying it's error, it's missing Linux headers, and it's going to tell you the version, you just need to install it. And so going back and forth without having the upgrade, you have to install this and a bunch of other things. So it's better that we just install the upgrade, because without the current Linux upgrade, you're going to run into problems. Okay, so I'm already rebooted. And then open up the terminal. We're going to do the KDMS and Git. We're going to say yes. Git is already there, right? That step is basically, we don't have to install Git, but we want to have that so that way we can do the repo pool. So after this, we are going to install the build essential, and it's going to need libraries. Okay. So without upgrade and update, you will not be able to run this. So pay attention to this. So if you have error here, right? It's going to say error, missing this and this and this. Just means that you just need to update and upgrade. So we're going to say yes, and it's going to install. So without the libraries, it will not be able to build. Now you notice that it's unpacking the header 6.6.15. However, sometimes it would not be able to see the Linux header, and without the Linux header, you cannot run the next command. So when you run into error, you know, likely that you do right here, you have to remove and then repeat it. Okay. So I'm here, then now I'm going to do a git clone. And then after I pull the repository for my driver, I'm going to make sure that my headers are available. So if you do the generic, it's just going to keep the current one for your Linux machine. And I already know that because of the Git repo here, I can change into that directory. So you have to really research what kind of Linux driver is available for certain adapter and where to get it. Sometimes you would get it from vendor and they would give you the instruction on what to install or where to pull it from. Windows and Mac OS, yeah, plenty. But a lot of the Mac OS one is similar to the Linux. So if you want to find driver, a lot of times developer, they would share it or it would be the vendor. So we need to be able to access where that folder is. So we're going to do a CD and then that, and then within that, we can do a make install. And so if it doesn't build here and it's showing you error, that means that you are missing some things at the beginning. Okay, so you got to start that part again. Even when it's building the module, if it's giving you some kind of error, because if you repeat it, sometimes you have to do a remove. It doesn't like to recreate it as a duplicate. So it would say that, oh, the folder already exists, the driver already exists, I won't build it. So you'll be able to. Okay, if you change your settings, stop clicking here, close that. You change your settings in here, step 7, you give it more weight. Yeah, look at step 7 and go from 7 and on and read the instruction. 8,004. Yeah, so it's unassociated. That's fine. It's not, it's because you didn't join any network, so you're not associated with any network. So whenever that you guys see your Wi-Fi is unassociated with something, it's just because you're not part of a certain network. So if you're not part of a certain network, it's not associated with any network, right? Okay, so we already set that up and let's start. So you're here, you did 8 meg, you did the 4 core, and then you need to start. Okay, okay, and then click start. Okay, so we just finished step 10, now 11. Okay, so we already built the driver. Notice that I don't have any error here. And at this point, if you click this thing right here, right, I'm still on Ethernet. So it doesn't matter if I'm on my laptop or I'm on my desktop. VirtualBox sees everything as Ethernet. So I need to shut it down. Okay. And I need to change my network configuration on VirtualBox. So once I shut it down, because you don't change it while it's alive, it's not going to be effective. So we're going to go back to settings. We're going to go to network. And we need to uncheck adapter. Make sure that you look through all your 4 options and disable this, because it forces it to be LAN. So click OK. Right? So after I have installed, and you can still go back and install Wi-Fi. I forgot to do that. So I'll do that next. But I'm here. I shut it down and I change it. But what I also need to do before I start it is to go to settings go to USB, and I would click USB 2.0. The reason why we select that, because even if it's 3.0, it's able to have backward compatibility. So most of your devices are at least 2.0 to 3.0. We don't know if this adapter, unless you read the box or read the description, but I always use 2.0. And then we're going to click add. And it's going to show up as Realtek, but it's not Realtek, right? What VirtualBox sees is Realtek, but it's actually the AC600 or whatever on the inside. This is a generic driver that the software sees on the outside, right? When we plug it in, it's through the Windows system that it sees it Realtek, unless you download and install it from the vendor. And I did that, and it still sees it as Realtek. So that's why I didn't write that step. But if it doesn't see it here, you need to go to the vendor website and download. Understand? The driver for Windows, because the host on the outside needs to recognize it in order to use it on the inside. We already took care of the inside Linux machine driver, but if the host on the outside that uses the application doesn't see it as a device, then you need to go to the website for your vendor and download. We're going to click OK there. We're going to click Start. I probably have to redo that step because I need to download Wi-Fi, but I think Wi-Fi might be equipped already. We'll see. So make sure that we have Wi-Fi down, and then before we shut it down.
Yeah, I think on that step, it says it's already installed. So
Yeah.
after...
Yeah, I know that Tally had added Wi-Fi a while back, but if you don't, if you're using Ubuntu or other things, you have to install it. Yeah. Give me a second. I'll help you troubleshoot it. So after your Wi-Fi is ready, when you click this symbol, you should see this, right? This is like your wireless adapter. It should show you, there are networks. But when you look at the WLAN information, it's not associated with anything because you're not part of any network, right? We talked about disassociation attack, simply just taking that device away from the network. When you associate it with the network, that's when you join a network, right? Like when I add to that network and I just put in the key. So right now I'm not connected to anything. So when you run this step right here, IW config, oops, it should show up, right? My WLAN 0, right? Why do I don't have the local area network? Because I just removed it on the outside with the VirtualBox. So I'm not using LAN, I'm using WLAN. So VBox is only going to do one or the other, right? It's not going to allow you to have both. It's either LAN or WLAN. Right now we're on WLAN. And it's not associated because we're not part of any wireless network, not yet. And then this is the name that it goes by, which is what we need is Wi-Fi at Realtek. The frequency, you're not on dual band. Remember, even if you have dual band, a lot of the times you cannot use 5G in some area like this. So it's better to use 2.4 anyways, because smaller signal goes farther, right? We already talked about the range before and so on. So hold on, let me. Okay, so we had left off where we looked at our IW. Always remember that you can look at your wireless configuration, right? Before it used to use IF, but IW just gives you the interface for your connectivity, including wireless. Take a screenshot of that. Look at your adapter nickname. So it should be like this. And it's not associated with any network because we didn't join any wireless network yet. Then we're going to look at the IP address. So when you pull this up, it's gonna give you the loop back because it didn't get the 10.0.2.15 because you're not on network address translation. We uncheck that box, remember, when we boot it? So that way we can use the wireless. But that's okay because we are still gonna be able to sense other wireless devices through signal. So before this, you need to make sure that you download all the package that you need. If not, you have to go back, check that box, download, uncheck it, mount your USB, and then repeat the process. It's just tedious, right? We can only use one thing at a time, either the local area network where we can have internet access or the wireless. If you want internet access, you can add RCCD and it's still gonna give you that, but then you would join it through RCCD, okay? Or your local area wireless network. So here I'm gonna get the loopback address for the iNet and my WLAN. It shows that it is up, it's power up, but it doesn't have any association. You see that? Right? It has broadcast address. And because it's not yet any part of any network or obtaining any IP addresses from any network, right? Usually the wireless router gives you IP address. So this is normal. Then the next part, we're going to use Wi-Fi. I think Kali Linux comes with Wi-Fi. I put the installation step there in case you're using a different version of Linux. But Wi-Fi is user-friendly. It's really great for PIN attack, brute force, dictionary attack, because it runs aircrack-ng, which is a common module for wireless attack. So when you do sudo Wi-Fi, we see how if it's there, it's going to highlight my command in blue. You need to be at root level. If you don't sudo su, you have to put sudo in front of any wireless attack-based command through application like Wi-Fi. Okay? It's going to ask for password. So when you do sudo Wi-Fi, what does it give you? This is important to understand because you want to distinguish between what's being given to you and when things are being attacked. This is like when you're looking at what networks is available to you, but it's giving you more information. We want to focus on WPS, right? Because it is PIN and it is faster to attack. So you start with that. Find the target that has WPS. Yes. Okay. And they are different names because there are different routers or access point. Second thing, pay attention to the power. You notice that the power is not 100% stable. So when you do a power attack, make sure that the value matches what's on your list. We get that? Okay, because when you get to that section, you're like, why did I put 70 here when it's 56? Well, put 56, okay? I only put that value because when I ran this, the DB shows 70. But if you're looking at the power, so if this is my target and it's 63, put 60, right? 60 dB stands for decibel, and that's the amount of frequency that you would see for that particular device. Sometimes it drops to 50. Maybe you can put 50. So at least 50, because that way you can attack it through the decibel parameter. Okay? Next. This list can go on a little bit longer. It depends on how many wireless access point that's available. So the channel that you see here, there are options that you can use the same channel for attack. But what we want for the first part is to look at WPS, and because it is pin-based and it is easy to attack with pixie dust with Wi-Fi. So once you have the list ready, look at your list, find your target. If you don't want one, that might be too far, fewer decibel, you can do 2. So I'm gonna do don't attack their HP because we're gonna get in trouble. but we can do this one, right? So I'm going to do 4. So you can pick the one that you want to pursue. So once I have that, press Control C. It tells you that here. Press Control C when you're ready. Press Control C. And then from that list, enter the number of your target. So I'm going to do number 4. You can pick another one. You can do 1 and 2, right? And then if you're not happy with that, sudo Wi-Fi again until it gives you the updated list. Because sometimes you have more, sometimes you have less. It depends on which one comes online. So we're going to do 4. I thought I put more online, but maybe. Okay, so when it does this, it's going to wait for target to respond, right? It's sending frame and then waiting for the beacon for number 4. And if it cracks it, it's going to show you this is the pin number, even with 8-digit pin, right? So this part takes a little bit of time, maybe 10-15 minutes. Now, once you have that pin, if your target is WPS, on the next round of attack, it's going to revert back to the .json file, which stores that pin already. It's going to streamline the attack. It's going to say, hey, I already found what you want from me, right? Here's the pin. Look at it. But if you want WPA, I'm still going to attempt it, but you can just connect to this device with the pin. So what I have you do is you can, if you select the same target that's already been attacked and gotten a pin, use that pin to access that target, right? If you connect, it's going to ask you for some kind of secret, put in the pin number, and that's how you're able to connect to that wireless network. But if you want to use a different target that's more challenging, just know that some of these applications will attempt brute force for WPA, and it's going to time out after 300 seconds or whatever, how many minutes that the application is designed to do. So if that's unsuccessful, switch to Kismet or another application that's going to be able to brute force it. But what I want is I want to show you how you can get in. The fastest way is if you see, you know, if you see WPS, then be able to use the pin. If you're already attacking the same target with decibel, it's going to say, hey, I already found the pin for you. If it didn't find the pin, it's going to try to attempt that again, right? First, and then it's going to go through WPA attack. You can also use --WPA. That's going to be only WPA attack. So the option that you have here is important. It's going to tell the application what to perform. Okay. I just want to make sure I have it recorded, but so.
Yeah, the first time it worked for me, but from there on out.
Yeah.
Timeouts.
Yeah, because it's already performing. So if you're using the same attack, you're going to get that. Unless you reboot the device, or even if you reboot your virtual machine or your Kali Linux, it's still going to do the same thing. Because what happened is the frame and all of that has already been received and sent. It puts your pin information into JSON. So the way that they design the application, from that point on, you have the pin already. You should be able to log on to that network. You can join that network. Understand? So it's gonna be like no good after that, right? So probably switch target or switch application. Okay. There's good thing about Wi-Fi and there's bad thing about Wi-Fi. Is it consistent? Probably not all the time. Yeah, I've done that. I attempt the same type of attack 4 times to see how it responds. The first time it's very successful, very fast. And then after that, it's the same target. It's slow. Right? That's normal. Then you switch to aircrack-ng or something else using airmon. There are plenty. So how can I find some of the tools? Right? If you go to the all application icon, the dragon icon right here, if you go to the wireless, Callie already selected all of these things. You know, when you're using Pixie in Wi-Fi, that's Pixie WPS as an individual application. So Wi-Fi put everything in one, right? You can use Kismet. I'm just going to tell you that Kismet does require a little bit of setup for wireless. There's database involvement. Read their documentation first before you attempt Kismet. I was going to write instruction for this, but it's, you know, maybe we'll do it later on, right? Fern is also included with other area, but you want to run all of these things as root users. So when you're on as Callie, you are going to be asked to input, and then you have some Bluetooth. Yeah, only spoof tooth, but you can use other, right? Like you saw there, you can use Bluebug, you can use other. It's just Callie removed them whenever that maybe it's not supported or they're not able to install it. But Bully is built in with Wi-Fi. So that's why I chose Wi-Fi, is because all of these packages are already built in. They are individual modules that you can use, Reaver, and then Wi-Fi is here. This list used to be longer, right? But sometimes, you know, development change. So, all right. So you can find some of these for practice. Now, when you're using aircrack-ng or airmon, it uses MAC address only. So unlike some of the other, right, Wi-Fi is easy that you can just select the option from the list, because what happens in the application, it's written in Python, it puts it onto a container like a list. And then if you select it, it's just going to use the array or the list index to be able to pull that particular name or MAC address that's tied to it and plug it in for you. So they automate a lot of that. But when you're using other application, it's always a good practice when you're doing any kind of attack, write down IP address and MAC address. That's a must. Okay. So in the other application, you're going to see that it's always going to be referred to the MAC address. You can copy and paste it, but if you have it noted somewhere, that can be used for your report and all of these other things. So it's always good to have that recorded. Someone is using a hotspot on their iPhone. You see that, right?
Yeah.
So if now the Apple is pretty good at hiding its UID, but there are ways that you can find it, right? Because, attacking this is probably gonna be failed if in that case, but you can see, questionable, two things that come to mind when I see that with the SSID. Is it a honey? And is it really a hotspot, right? So, but you would see, and then, so when you see WPA, likely that brute force is going to take a lot of effort. Did you guys get pinned?
First
No?
time, yeah, they're on, Python's not a back end question.
Yeah, so if it's failed, just answer the questions, right? It's not able to crack the pin after the first time. Was it successful? No. Did the router pin or passphrase crack? No.
What are the access points?
There's one up here. There's one right there. There's one in the back. There should be another one, but maybe the other one is not on discoverable mode.
The four were there, but slowly two of them got the WPS turned off. Somebody's
Yeah, after you attack it the first time, it forces you to go through the WPA. It will not generate it again. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't see it. So, and I have also attempted rebooting the virtual machine like Kali Linux and rerunning the application. It's the same. So it's like I mentioned before to Jose, you need to switch application or target. Yeah, and then also sometime it's failing like this is because if 10 of us is attacking one target, and then, you know, so if you have the same target that a lot of people are addressing, sometimes it's not responding. And if the system doesn't respond, then you're not going to be able to get anything, right? So now it's still waiting for the target again. But if 10 people are attacking it at once, I mean, we would achieve DOS or distributed denial of service, I guess, right?
I think screenshot it. How about we all just take turns? Civilize about our attacks. You can actually see them.
Yeah, you can do team attack.
That's what I think.
Yeah, so the 8DF9, that one is off.
That's the one that I did and it worked.
Okay, so now it's turn off for some reason. Let me check to see which one that is. So I have up here is the E29. Yeah, this one should work because I tested it 4 or 5 times. Let me see the F9. Yeah, this is the F9. So if who's attacking 2? Number 2?
I got
No? Okay. Nobody's attacking number 2? F9? And then, I'll reset it. I think some of you are doing 4, right? 4, yes, work. Then number 4, let's see. Number 4 is the BA ones. Back here.
someone.
Yeah, in front of both of them, so. I'd like to share. It's
In the back, that's not as far. Regular BA. I think when you're closer to it, your DB is higher. So you might get like 70 or close to 80. But when you kind of far from it, you might get like 50, 60. So that also changes too. So you see how so this is pertaining, you know how you get those little bar signals on your smart devices? It's really an interpretation of this. How much signal you're getting, your decibel.
Stacy.
Yeah.
But I want IP address and just keep saying. So, see how I'm supposed to have a password thing? I typed it in by hand. How do I get rid of that? Type the command.
Here. Type SS. Okay, so E, I think you insert by accident. Press insert. Okay. Type SS now. You're not typing SS? Okay, type E. SS. But why is your S, no, I think you just typed in the wrong key. Okay, so let's start. Go right arrow, delete, so backspace and review. Type IV space AGDRESS. Yeah, your SP is bad for some reason. Let me see. All right, so now let's move it. Okay, let's just reboot it. I don't know why it's doing that, but it's just inserting symbols. Something's weird. So restart, type reboot, or click the power button and restart. Okay, so as you go, right, I'm gonna tell you what to expect. When you do the power, pay attention to this value, make sure that it matches, right? Remember, that's the whole point in getting the list earlier, right here. It's close to what you see right here, because if you're trying 70 and it's actually less, like I mentioned before, this value is pertaining to how far you are from it line to sight, right? If you're right next to it or really close by, it would be 70 or higher. But if you're far away, you notice that these right here, right? If I'm far away from some of them, that's like the signal bar that you see. A small one, a big one, and a bigger one, 5 bar is that you have full signal. That's you really close. So the higher the number, the higher the number of bars that you get on your smartphone, kind of like that. Okay, so you want to put in a close to value. So you might not want to use 70. You might want to use 50. If it's 59, if it's 63, you use 60, you know? So in that range. And then I'm gonna tell you that when you do this, it might not be able to crack it again. Even if you cracked it here or you haven't cracked it, it might not be able to crack it, right? If it cracked it once, it's not gonna do it again. It switch it over to WPA, possibly because that model of the router and also the application is it's just not able to use the same mode again once it does it. So put down your result here. And then when you're using Reaver, it might be the same. So Wi-Fi is good for some part, right? And then when you're using, so the whole point in this is I show you that you can use the sub-module of the application. So WPA, it's going to time out after a certain amount of time. So when you get here, right, take a screenshot of the AP list. And then but use a different target. So I had always put down that you can switch around with the target. Okay. This allows you to use the dictionary attack, and the word list is built with the Wi-Fi application. There are other word lists that comes down with the other wireless attack tools. So if you have a word list, make sure that you had put it in the location and the actual URL, or I mean not the URL, the file path that you would use there. Then when you do aircrack-ng, okay, let me see. And then if you don't want, you're tired of it, you can press Control-C and come back to it later. Do you want to continue? Yeah, you can do exit. Okay. So I'm slow because I think it's responding to the others that are still attacking it. So I'm gonna demonstrate a little bit of aircrack. So if you want, you can proceed to this area after you complete the other part. So normally, I'm gonna tell you, sometimes you would have to do this. It might name it WLAN 0mon, but you want to make sure that you check. Remember how we did the IWConf earlier? Just make sure that you identify your interface and put in your interface name correctly. Okay? So if you want to do this, you got to make sure that you're a root user. You have to do sudo, and airmon is part of aircrack-ng. I'm sorry? No, it will be the interface ID. Some application, it wants the mon with the WLAN, but I think the updates for a lot of these applications, they got rid of that because it's confusing to people. Back in the day, you have to do WLAN 0mon monitor. It's so dumb, but anyway, so it tells me that I'm using this interface. This is the driver, and that's the correct driver, right? On the outside, it might see it as Realtek, but on the inside, this is the proper chipset. Perfect. We got it configured properly. If you using a generic driver, it would not be able to determine your chipset there. Right? The processor that's used for that dongle. So once we have, so I would always start with looking at WLAN and making sure that the driver is correct. If there's mismatch information, then you need to fix the driver issue because it's only effective if it can use it full capability with the proper driver. Then AeroDump is part of aircrack-ng, and we're gonna simply use our interface that's wireless. So this part is a little bit more fun because you actually see it. So it's kind of like Wi-Fi earlier, the station. It doesn't give you the besside with the name. It actually gives you the MAC address. So you have to get used to it looking at it this way. It doesn't give you the plain text human SSID. It gives you the actual MAC address. Okay. And it tells you the power here. Is it accurate compared to Wi-Fi? They're kind of close because it's sensing based on your antenna of your adapter. So the application, it depends on their IO library. How good is their IO library for the application? So you would see it. This one might be a little higher, right? It see the signal more. And then the beacon, how many times that the router or the access point advertise itself, or the wireless device advertise itself or broadcast. And then you have the open, you have WPA3, you have WPA3 or 2. These are a little bit harder to crack, right? And then you can look at the authentication. If they're using certain authentication method, that will be harder. So this gives you an overview of, you know, what it is, what kind of feature it's using. And then there's some open ones.
PSK.
What's PSK, you guys? So your PSK, this is for what? So WPS earlier, pre-shared key. Oh, come on. We have to remember these things if we're going to attack wireless. Pre-shared key. So what does that mean? Pre-shared key usually uses passphrase. And so, for example, if I go to your house and I want to connect to your wireless network, I ask you, what's the password, right? That's the passphrase or password. I type that in. Once I type that in, that key is now shared to my device. Understand? So it's a setting on the wireless router or access point, so that way the key is shared through human text passphrase or passcode. Okay. So we have to know wireless a little bit better, right? If we're going to attack it, we have to understand it more. Pre-shared key. Okay, we good with this? So once you do this, you can do the air dump, and it's going to show this. It's going to give you the list, very similar to the pseudo wifite, but it's using MAC address. Record the MAC address. So select your target, right? Find the open ones, the 1, the 4, similar to what you see with the WPS and so on. So pick the ones that you want to so the 1, the 2, the 4. And then I forgot to highlight this because I was very, very sleepy when I did this. So if your WLAN mon doesn't work, this is the original way. I was performing other attacks. So you can attempt this one. Put in your MAC address or your BSS ID. So you have to find it from the previous step there. And then if your mon doesn't work, I thought I tested this and it should be okay. You need to insert the MAC address. Okay, so in order to crack web, this is the number of IVs that you need, right? 40,000 to 85,000. So I'm going to tell you that to crack web, you have to be able to capture data. So if we don't have packet capture, it's no good, right? Even if you run this, it's going to listen and nothing happens because there's no AV to plug in, right? So realistically, why is that? Because nobody joins that network yet. So you want to have to access a busy network if you want to crack, okay? That means that because you're listening on packets, you're able to capture their key through the initialization vector. Okay, so I didn't have you take screenshot or anything there, but when you run this, you would see that it's listening. And because there's no other systems on there, it's always going to listen until there's some traffic. And if they're on there, they have to log into the web or use some kind of network services to get some kind of traffic. I know it's 8 o'clock already, but so go through, look at the air dump again. And then if you want WPA attack, you would do, this is the best one to use, best side. But this is part of aircrack-ng as well. So if you install aircrack-ng, it comes down with it. Okay. So let's try that one. Yeah. It's on the
What I did was.
yeah, it's gonna time out after a while, but yeah, it should find a pin.
And what you can do is just type it and then the rest.
But you're on a 4 and 8 gig of RAM, right? And on a virtual machine, but if you're doing it on a regular
What it
computer,
is, not just for it.
step.
Take is a shortcut for it.
Yeah, mine's like that.
Keep on going.
So.
But you can do the other parts.
Space.
So if you guys are timing out on some of the other ones, that your target might be busy, so just do another, do another part. What,
You say with capacity.
did you press the insert?
No, what I use having is I have like, but what I these six space cases, just get it on these two that.
Yeah, but every time you type an S, so I think it's a keyboard configure.
Oh, man.
So wireless?
Were you so good at math? How many are?
It's around.
You're done. You're done. You said 55?
Yeah.
No, man, I say like 30. 30. Bro, watch it be 30. Oh my God.
Wow, that's.
Man, it is not very sure.
So did we get some pins or no? The first time, sure you did.
Like 30. Around 30. Oh, that was 30.
And you can't do the other one, I mean, the wireless without.
You're that's what I know when I open it, what do you mean?
So no rules in that means that.
I appreciate that. If I ever need something a bit more of a reference, I'll reach out to you. I appreciate it. No, thank you. It's crazy. Doing well, but you just keep on going.
Yeah, just.
It's time to see what it is.
So I just trying to follow each step by step. And you don't know.
So now. once
And
that
you're
happens,
gonna throw up a lot of
you don't
arrows
need
right now,
to
you keep
install
on going,
Wi-Fi,
but
but
just
just
keep on
down.
pushing, I think someone works, say it doesn't work.
Uncheck that box, make sure the USB.
Doing great, doing great. Thank you, I'm here to help when you need it. Thank you.
You're good?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just gotta keep going. I hope you have time to stay late.
So looks like Wi-Fi attack is a little harder. Okay, and I didn't write that many steps either, because it's just a slower attack. Okay, how far did we get? Not far at all. Some of you kind of halfway. Anybody got to D or E? Some of you did. Do you want to come back to this one and then finish? But you have to save your, otherwise you already know how to configure, right? Some of you are like, yeah, I don't want to do those again. I don't want to do update and upgrade again. You still have about 50 minutes with me here, 45 minutes, but I know some of you have to leave, so. Okay, I'll do attendance, but when you get to some of the later part, dictionary attack, right? And then your airmon, you're gonna do WPA2. So just like any brute force, it's gonna take time, and a lot of the times it might fail. So you have to be patient with it. And then if your word list doesn't work, so here we're using Fern, right? We saw a little bit of that in the notes. And this is a common.txt word list, so you can plug that in for hackdump. And this is where you use aircrack-ng. Okay. Now, when you run this, basically you're performing the attack from a capture, and the capture happens from the previous step. So if you don't do 53, you cannot do 54. Okay, just remember that, because this file needs to be exist in order for this to work. Okay. All right. So we are going to stop recording.